A reading from the wisdom of Jesus. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe in his name, which were born, not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. The light came into the world, and the darkness did not overcome it.
How's that? And God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son to redeem it. That is, God the Father remained hidden behind the vibratory realm that went out from his being, but then secreted himself as the Christ intelligence in all matter and in all living beings in order to bring beautiful evolutional coaxings, all things back to his home of everlasting blessedness. Without the presence of God permeating creation, man would indeed feel bereft of divine blessings. How sweetly, sometimes almost imperceptibly, this blessing comes to his aid when he bows his knee in supplication. His creator, man's creator and supreme benefactor, is never more than a devotional thought away. So I'd like to start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, we are your children. You love us as a mother loves her child, as a father loves his child. You desire only our healing and our growth and our evolution. Your light is ever shining before us, enlivening us and enlightening us. We pray tonight to be more deeply attuned to that light. And we pray to be your light in the world. Amen. So good evening. The theme tonight is hope. But I want to say what hope isn't before I say what hope is. Hope is not optimism. See, optimism is something that is created by the human person. It's not bad, but it's something that we create. Hope is not wishful thinking. Hope really comes from a different order. It comes from a higher order. Hope comes from above and beyond us. Hope has nothing to do with the circumstances that we're in. Hope transcends the circumstances. It is bigger than the situations. It is a transcendental grace. It is a force. It is a light force. It is real, not imagined. Let me try to make this very concrete. I'm going to quote one of my, heard me quote him before, boyhood heroes, is Martin Luther King. And this is taken from a speech he gave literally the night before he died. And you can relate it to some of our circumstances today. Quote, "Something is happening in our world. The world is all messed up. The nation is sick. Trouble is in the land, confusion all around. No, this is hope. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. And I see God working in this period. Then he goes on to say at the end of the speech, like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you. But I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. And so I am happy tonight, even though the world's messed up. I am happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything, even though the world's messed up. I'm not fearing any man or anything, even though the world's messed up. You getting that? Hope. He's talking about hope. Hope is something that transcends the situation. It is the light and it's the love of God entering into time and space, and it is bigger than any darkness that we are facing. I'm not fearing any man or anything. Why? Because my eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Glory and light are interchangeable realities. Light is God's glory is light. So there is a force in the world, there is an energy in the world, there is a movement in the world that is not created by us, but it is given to us. It is hope. And again, hope is not a sentiment, it's not optimism, it is literally a force. And it is a force that has a purpose. It is an evolutionary force that is guiding us and leading us to where we need to go individually and collectively. Think about the beginning of creation. I want to make this very real. I'm going to start out with some universal examples and bring it down to our everyday lives. Think about the beginning of creation. Scientists tell us that it took place about 14 billion years ago, give or take. And what happened was that there was this explosion that started to spread out. Now, if you were there and you could watch it, it looked like absolute chaos. It wasn't like the first thing that God created vis-a-vis the Big Bang was a beautiful tree. It was just this explosion of subatomic particles at a great velocity and very hot, just starting to spread all out. And if any of us were there at that moment, we would have said, well, this is going nowhere. Nowhere. It's chaotic. It's crazy. It doesn't make sense. But 14 billion years, we're here. It was going somewhere. There was something driving it. One of the things that scientists said, that what happened with the Big Bang is there was also the presence of light that started to emerge in the universe. Now think of the line from the prologue of John's Gospel. The light came into the world, and the darkness did not overcome it. The light came into the world, and the darkness did not overcome it. God's light, that beam of hope, that light force was present at the very first instant of creation. It's a powerful presence. It's a purposeful presence. And it began to guide that chaos towards an evolutionary end. And again, here we are. When they nailed Jesus to a cross, for example, it looked like it was done, finished. But the light came into the world, and the darkness did not overcome it. And that light resurrected Jesus on Easter morning. If you go to 1942, 1943, you'd probably say there was a pretty good chance that the Jewish people were going to be exterminated. They're not. And now you have the nation of Israel. The light came into the world, and the darkness did not overcome it. Now let's make this personal. I know some of your background, some of you have shared your stories with me. Some of you have had childhoods that you should not have survived. Yet the light came into the world and the darkness did not overcome it. Some of you have come back from failed marriages and broken hearts, and there's no reason on earth why you should dare to love again. But here you are in a second marriage, loving. The light came into the world, and the darkness did not overcome it. Some of you, at some point in your life, have physically been on death's bed. Prima Ramada's not here tonight, but she's a good example of this. She should have died 2 or 3 or 4 times. The light came into the world, and the darkness did not overcome it. The light, this light force, this hope, is operating in all of our lives. It is real. It is palpable. And it is absolutely guiding us, no matter what the circumstances look like today. It is absolutely guiding us towards our highest evolutionary end. If it can take the chaos of the Big Bang and bring us to this point, it can take us in our present situation, and is taking us in our present situation, to where we need to go, to a higher state of consciousness, to a higher order of life. I want you to remember this phrase. Let it become a prayer. The light came into the world, and the darkness did not and cannot overcome it. Period. End of discussion. That's why Martin Luther King could stand up and say, I fear nothing or no one. He wasn't naive about the circumstances. He wasn't naive about the challenges. But he was plugged into this light force. He was plugged into this higher consciousness. And it elevated him above his fears. It elevated him above his anxieties. It elevated him above his limitations. He knew that light force. He knew that force of hope. I've been to the mountain. I have seen the glory of the Lord. And that glory of the Lord, that light, is operating in all of our lives. And it cannot and will not be defeated. Now, this is, in a sense, the point of what I'm trying to say to you tonight. We human beings are in a rather unique position. We have the ability within us to consciously, intentionally, purposely cooperate with that life force, with that light, with that beam of hope. It's operating with or without us. But we, again, have the capacity to integrate it into our day-to-day lives. And we have the capacity to ride that beam of hope, that beam of life. We have the capacity to speed up our individual evolution and the collective individualism, the collective evolution of the world. We have the capacity to do that if we want to. If we want to. If we want to. So that's what I want to move into. How do we consciously cooperate with this light force, with this hope, this evolutionary being that is really God's presence in creation? Yogananda always begins with meditation. But let me say how it works specifically in this context. Most of you know my background. I was raised in the city and really never been out in the country, certainly at night. And then when I was 16, went to live with my foster family. They actually had a farm out in the country. And sometimes at night, particularly during the summer when it was warm out, I would go and they had this kind of this little hill, and at the bottom of the hill was a pond. And I remember one summer night, because then there were no competing lights, and the sky there was a full moon, and it was like the stars were jumping out to me. The light of the moon was just so clear, and I was completely mesmerized by it. And then I looked at the pond, and there was no breeze. The pond was like glass. It was still. And it perfectly reflected the light of the heavens. It perfectly reflected the light of the stars. It perfectly reflected the moonlight. Now, what does it have to do with meditation? What does meditation do? It stills the mind. It quiets our appetites. It brings a level of stillness. And so what happens from meditation, without even trying, we reflect that light. We reflect the light of hope. When we have a peaceful and still and calm mind. That's why Yogananda says to meditate. Second thing is to paraphrase the words of Yogananda. Communion with God, communion with that light, communion with that hope is always, always just a devotional prayer, a devotional thought away. So the first step is that we create that stillness, that calm, and that peace through meditation that reflects the light force, the hope force. And then what prayer does, it pulls that light down into our consciousness. It pulls it down into our consciousness. So I want to try a little experience. I want you to close your eyes. There's a relative calm in this room. I just want you to take a few simple breaths. And I'm going to repeat the Lord's Prayer, line by line. You breathe that in. By breathing it in, you're breathing that light force, that dynamic of hope into your stillness. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. And forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Just keep your eyes closed for a few more seconds. And let that just sink in. And then take a deep breath and open your eyes. I want to make this very practical. There's such a thing as sacred magic. Let me tell you how sacred magic works. Something inspired from the divine, something inspired from the heavens descends into time and space. It's a gift from God. It is that light force that I'm talking about. It is that evolutionary impulse. And God gives us these sacred words and these sacred practices because They bring that light force into our consciousness. So I want to make it very simple. As you move through your day, stop. If you feel out of touch, stop. If you feel hopeless, stop. Breathe. And prayerfully repeat the Lord's Prayer with sincerity. And keep on doing it. It will imbue you with that light force. It'll instill you, that light force in you. Spirituality is not complicated. It's very simple. We just have to take these simple gifts and really plant them inside of us. The Lord's Prayer came from the lips of Jesus, but it originated in the heart of God. It is a gift that brings us into the heart of God and releases that light force in our lives. Yogananda said the best time to pray is after you've meditated. Why? Because things are calm. And then when we pray in that sense of calmness, it draws the light into us. So when you're feeling lost or you're feeling hopeless, stop, breathe, and do the Lord's Prayer. It will connect you. One more piece, though, just as important as the first two. If we are going to bring that hope, that light force into our lives, we have to be a servant of hope. We have to become beacons of hope. We have to be willing to embody hope in our lives. See, early on in the spiritual life, this is how it works. God gives us hope. God imbues us with the light. And then we start to get hopeful about our lives. But at a certain point, God says, okay, now, you have to imbue others with hope. You have to become an instrument of that light force. It's not just about enjoying it for yourself and evolving yourself. You have to become a vehicle of that light force for the world and for others. Starting with the people closest to you, your family. Let me say it a little bit differently. If you call yourself a Christian, a Hindu, a Judas, a Jew, a Muslim, you're an ambassador for God. You're an ambassador for that light force. You're not there just to receive it and enjoy it. You're there to become its instrument. And the more we give ourselves over to that light force, the more we become a force for hope and light and transformation in the world. So it's not enough to just receive it. It's not enough just to be close to God. We're called to be God's ambassadors. Ambassadors of hope and light in the world. So, I'm going to be a little bit radical. When Jesus began his public ministry, and that little footnote, when I talk about Jesus, Jesus wasn't the first Christian. He was a Jewish rabbi. He was a mystical Jew. Jesus belongs to everybody, not just the Christian. And when Jesus began his public ministry, he was in a synagogue, and he got up and he read a scroll. It was actually from the prophet Isaiah, and it perfectly captures his ministry as a light force, as a bearer of light. And I'm going to read it, but then I want to take it a little bit deeper. So this is what he said in the midst of the synagogue. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. And it said he rolled up the scroll and put it away, and then actually tried to stone him. How dare he say that he could be a light bearer? But he dared. Martin Luther King dared. If you call yourself a follower of God, We're supposed to follow in the footsteps of Jesus. Jesus never said, worship me. He did say, follow me. So if you call yourself a spiritual person, the words of Jesus also belong to you. You get me? So, if you're signing on, if you're not signing on, you don't have to do this. If you're signing on, I want you to repeat, I want to go sentence by sentence, and I want you to repeat this out loud. It's not going to help Jesus if we just adore him. We're called to become Jesus. We're called to become Yogananda. We're called to become Mother Teresa. So line by line, I'll say it, you repeat it. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. Because he has anointed me.
Because he has anointed me.
He really has. To proclaim good news to the poor.
To proclaim good news to the poor.
He has sent me.
He has sent me.
To proclaim freedom for the prisoners.
To proclaim freedom for the prisoners.
And recovery of sight for the blind.
And recovery of sight for the blind.
And to set the oppressed free.
And to set the oppressed free.
And to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
And to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
So you have your mission. You have your purpose. We're not called to just enjoy hope. We're not called to just take it in. We're called to give it away. We're called to be light bearers. I know people are still coming to talk to me and they're afraid. But see, when it's daylight, you don't need the light of the stars. We need the starlight when it's night and when it's darkest. And we need to focus on the light. And we need to pray to become light. Divine in me, rousing, trying.